In this video, I'm going to show you how to build this simple yet powerful UX/UI design line chart, and then when finished, I'm going to explain the why behind the UX/UI decisions that I made while creating it. Let's jump in. Just a quick note, my tutorials are created with object interaction off, and I also have new card visual on. So if you want to follow along step by step, please adjust these settings in your Power BI reports if they're different. Now for this demo, I just created a simple background in PowerPoint that we're going to place our line chart on. Now if this were a real report, this obviously wouldn't be our approach since we're only using a line chart here. However, I wanted to show you quickly how I created this particular background. Now this line chart that we're going to build, shown here, will utilize a field parameter with 2 dimension fields in it. The user is going to be able to view by month, like we see right here, or select quarter and view by the quarter view, like we see right here. All right, so first thing we're going to do is bring in the background that we made in PowerPoint. We're going to change the image size to fit and lower the transparency to 0%. Now the first thing we're going to do here is create a field parameter. We're going to go up to modeling, new parameter, fields. I'm going to name this underscore date par period. I'm going to open up the date table, and I'm first going to add my fiscal year month field, followed by my quarter field. I'm going to uncheck add slicer to this page, and then click create. So if I open up my data pane, we can see that we already have our new date parameter table selected. If we look at the top left, we can see what it entails. Note the order IDs shown, as we're going to reference these later. As you can see, we have fiscal year month with the ID of 0 and quarter with the ID of 1. And we could actually change these names here in quotations. So for this one, I'm actually going to change it to month. Now I'm not going to cover field parameters in depth here, but if you want to learn more about field parameters, feel free to check out my video, Take Your Power BI Field Parameters to the Next Level, shown here. Let's take a look at these fields that we added to our date parameter. We have the fiscal year month and the quarter fields. Our fiscal year month field is simply a shorthand version of our reporting period field, which is a month year field shown here with a date data type. Now in this example line chart that we're going to go through, we actually want to view the months by fiscal year. So for example, if I come over here and filter to fiscal year 2023, and then go into reporting period, I can see that the fiscal year starts in July and ends in June. So therefore, in my line chart, I need these months to go in this exact order. So one way I could accomplish this is by creating a fiscal year month order calculated column and reordering the month numbers with the correct order that I want them in. And then for the fiscal year month field, I can go to sort by column and then sort it by that new fiscal year month order field. So we can see here in this completed example that the month of July is first and the month of June is last. All right, let's go ahead and start building this out. First thing I'm going to do is insert a tile slicer. I'm going to drag it right here, and then I'm going to zoom in to 150%. I'm going to take the slicer and place it to the right-hand side, so when I see that vertical red line, I know I'm dead center. I'm going to move it to the top while not going over the edge of our background header. We'll manually adjust the bottom height, and then we'll go ahead and manually adjust the right side width. Now let's open up data, then our date parameter. We're going to insert this into our slicer. After that, we're going to go to Format Your Visual, General, Properties, and then Padding. We're going to make the left padding 20 pixels, the top will be 6, the right will be 0, and the bottom will be 6. Let's scroll down. We're going to turn title off and header icons off. Let's open up Effects, turn background off. Scroll back up and select Visual Settings. We'll open up the slicer settings, and we're going to select Force Selection. This will ensure the user can only see a month view or quarter view at one time within our line chart. Let's open up shape. We're going to change the shape to rounded rectangle. We're going to change the rounded corners to 5. Then we'll open up a layout. We're going to change the max rows to 1 and the columns to 2. And we're going to change the space between buttons to 10 pixels. Next, we're going to open up callout values. While we're on the default state, we're going to make sure values is on, and the font size is going to be Sago UI with the size of 12. We're going to change the color to white, and we're going to increase the transparency to 20%. Now we'll switch the state to hover. We'll lower the transparency to 0%. Change it to selected, and lower the transparency to 0% there as well. Let's also go ahead and change the font to Sago UI semi-bold for selected. Go back to hover, change the font to Sago UI semi-bold for there as well. And then for default, we'll leave it with regular Sago UI. Let's close callout values and turn selection icon on and open it up. The default state, we're going to leave icon on and then change the color to white and increase the transparency to 20%. Let's switch to hover, lower the transparency to 0%, switch to selected, lower the transparency to 0%. Then we'll go ahead and change the state back to default. Next, we're going to open up buttons. Under padding, we're going to go with custom. We're going to change the top padding to 0, the bottom padding to 0, and the left and right to 10 pixels. We'll scroll down and turn border off. We'll open up fill. We're going to leave the color as white, but we're going to increase the transparency to 100%. Now let's scroll up a little and change the state to hover. We'll scroll down, change the color to white, and the transparency to 90%. Let's change the state to selected, color to white, and then the transparency to 80%. And we'll go ahead and change that back to default. All right, let's take a look at our slicer here, and we can see our effects are working good. However, I can see that I want to decrease the size of the selection icon a little bit. So let's open up selection icon, go to layout, and we're going to make the size 15, and we'll change the spacing to 20. All right, let's zoom back to 100%. And one thing I notice here is that the fill color is overlapping our outer edge. Let's zoom in a little bit and adjust the width. Stop when the straight line meets the top right radius. Once you have that, you can zoom back to 100%. All right, so next we're going to add our period of time label here in the top left corner. Let's go ahead and insert a basic card. We're going to open up data, measures, and I'm going to drag in a measure called current fiscal year title. We're going to zoom in a little bit, then manually adjust the size of this card to fit in this left side of our background box. Adjust the bottom, and the left side looks good. Go ahead and zoom back out to 100%. And while I have that selected, I'm going to go to Format Your Visual, General, Properties. We're going to scroll down, open up Effects, and turn Background off. Turn Header Icons off, and then we'll scroll up, go to Visual Settings, and turn Category Label off. Let's open up Callout Value. We're going to change the size to 12. We'll leave the font as Sago UI, and we'll change the color to white. All right, so let's quickly break this measure down for you so you understand it. So this measure is stringing together a mix of text and values. First thing we need to do is capture the max fiscal year within the data set. Next, we need to capture the min month within the latest fiscal year, which happens to be July of 2022. Next, we need to capture the max month within the latest fiscal year, which we can see here in this data set is June of 2023. And then lastly, we string it together to create our custom period of time label that shows what the current fiscal year equals, along with the month date range of that current fiscal year. All right, so now it's time to build out our line chart. Let's open up visualizations and insert a line chart. I'm going to drag it right here. Then we'll zoom in to about 150%. Next, I'm going to manually adjust the width and the height to be the same size as our background box. We'll zoom back out to 100%. Now let's open up data, date parameter, and we're going to insert our date parameter into the x-axis. Next, we're going to open up our measures, and we're going to insert our gross sales current fiscal year measure right into the y-axis. Right under that, we're going to insert our gross sales for the previous fiscal year. Now let's look at these measures real quick. The gross sales current fiscal year is simply the sum of gross sales filtered to the current fiscal year. And then the gross sales previous fiscal year is the gross sales summed up, filtered to the previous fiscal year. You can see we're doing this by using a fiscal year rank field within the date table. If we look at that column within the date table, we can see that it's simply a calculated column providing the rank IDs to the fiscal year index column shown right here. All right, so let's go ahead and start cleaning this line chart up. Let's click on the line chart. We'll go to Format Your Visual, General, Properties, Padding. We're going to make the padding 10 pixels on all 4 sides. We're going to open up Advanced Options. I'm actually going to turn Responsive off. Then I'm going to scroll down, open up Title. We're actually going to use a measure that will dynamically change the title based on the ID of the parameter field selected. So I'm going to click FX and then open up Measures. And I'm going to select this measure called Gross Sales Current Fiscal Year versus Goal Line Chart Title. And then click OK. So let's look at this special title measure. If we look at the measure, we can see it's going to return the title shown here on this first row if the field parameter ID is equal to 0. And we know that the ID of 0 is related to the month field, and the 1 is related to the quarter field. So for example, if we look below, we can see we have month selected, therefore the ID of 0 is selected. Now if we look at the title, we can see the title is matching this first one. And if we click on quarter, we can see it's matching this title. All right, so now let's go back into our line chart and go to Format Your Visual, General, Effects. We're going to turn Background off. Then we'll click on the Visual Format Settings, open up X-axis. We're going to go with the Sago UI for font, size of 10, and a color of 333333, which is just a little lighter shade of black. We'll turn Title off, and then we'll open up our Y-axis. Under Values, we're going to go with Sago UI Semi-Bold. We'll change the font size to 10. We'll use the same color we did for our X-axis, and we're going to switch the axis position to the right-hand side. We'll also turn Title off. Let's scroll down, turn Legend off, open up Grid Lines, turn Grid Lines off. Let's keep scrolling down. We'll open up Lines. Let's change the series to All. We'll increase the width to 4, and we're going to change the type to Smooth. For Smooth type, we'll go with Cardinal, and we'll lower the tension to 0. Now we're going to scroll up and change the series to Gross Sales Current Fiscal Year. We'll scroll down and open up Color, and we're going to change the color to our theme color blue. So 5C85AD. Now let's scroll up and switch this to Gross Sales Previous Fiscal Year. We're going to change the line style here to dashed. We're going to lower the width to 1 pixel. We're going to scroll down and change the color to this white 30% darker gray color. So B3, B3, B3. Let's keep scrolling down and turn on Shade Area. Let's open it up. We'll leave the series as All. And we're going to change the area transparency to 95%. All right, next we're going to open up Markers. We're going to switch the series to Gross Sales Current Fiscal Year. And for Show for the series, we're going to turn it on. We're going to leave the type as a circle. We'll lower the size to 4 pixels. We'll open up Color. We'll change the color to our default black, and we'll leave border off. Now let's scroll down and turn Data Labels on and open it up. We're going to switch the series to Gross Sales Previous Fiscal Year and turn Show for the series off. And we'll switch it to Gross Sales Current Fiscal Year. And then we're going to scroll down and turn Value off. Let's turn Detail on and expand it. Open up data, and we're going to drag a measure into this data box called gross sales current fiscal year versus goal text. We're going to change the font size to 10, and for the font, we're going to go with Sago UI semi-bold. For the color, we're going to click FX. We'll change the format style to rules. We're going to change the measure to gross sales current fiscal year versus goal percentage. And I'm going to break these measures down for you in a little bit. Let's go ahead and add a new rule. Change all of these to number. We're going to say if greater than or equal to min and less than 0, give us this red color, so the hex code of D55D6F. And for the second row, we're going to say if greater than or equal to 0 and less than or equal to max, give us this green color, so the hex code of 32B18B. And we'll click OK. We're going to keep scrolling down and turn background on, expand it, change the color to white, and lower the transparency to 10%. Let's keep scrolling down and turn series labels on and expand it. We're going to switch the position to the left side. Then under series, we're going to select gross sales current fiscal year, open up value. We're going to change the font size to 10. We're going to change the font to Sago UI bold. And we're going to change the color to our theme color blue that matches the gross sales current fiscal year line. Now let's switch the series to gross sales previous fiscal year. We'll change the size to 10. We'll go with Sago UI. And we're going to change the color to this white 30% darker. So B3, B3, B3. We'll also make it italic. All right, so we're done with all our visual settings. However, I can see I forgot to format the title. So let's go back to General, Title. We're going to center align it. We'll change the font to Sago UI bold. We'll make the size 12. Under color, we'll make sure we go with our default black color. All right, so we're starting to look really good here. Now these data label percentages that we see are showing us what percentage the gross sales were versus the goal for that period of time. Now before I break those measures down, let's take this a step further and add a goal line to this chart. So it'll be easier for the users to understand those percentages. Now there's a few ways we can do this, but we're actually going to use error bars in this particular example. So let's go ahead and select our line chart. We'll go up to add further analysis to your visual, error bars. Under apply settings, we're going to make sure we're on gross sales current fiscal year, and we're going to turn on enabled. Now under options, we're going to drag a measure called gross sales monthly goal current fiscal year into this lower bound. Then we're going to scroll down and open up bar. We're going to make sure the bar color is this shade of gray, so this white 60% darker. We'll leave the width as a 1, and the border color can stay white. Let's turn on error band, open it up. We're going to change the style to line only. Turn off match series color, click in the band color, and we're going to go with our theme color 3, 32B18B. Also going to lower the transparency to 0%. Now one thing I might want to adjust is the positioning for our detail labels. So I'm going to select the line chart, go to format your visual, open up data labels, and then under options, I'm going to change the position to above. All right, so I think this looks really good here. Let's test it out. We're on month, now we're on quarter, looks good, and we'll go back to month. So these error bars are pretty neat because they allow us to cleanly show the relationship between the goal and the plus minus percentage to goal for the gross sales. Now let's quickly break down those measures that we used for this line chart. So the first measure we're going to look at is gross sales current fiscal year versus goal percentage. Let's take a look and see how we're getting the gross sales percentage to goal that we have in our line chart. So the first thing we need to do is create a calculated table within a variable that includes the goal value and the gross sales for the current fiscal year only. And we can see what that looks like visually on the right-hand side here. Next, we need to sum up those columns from our calculated table, and we need to store those values within variables. And then lastly, we perform our percent to goal calculation, which is gross sales for the current fiscal year minus the gross sales goal divided by the gross sales goal. Now, in order to bring those up and down arrows into our visual, we need to create a text version of that measure. So we can see here on the right-hand side that we're bringing in that same measure into a variable, and then we're using a switch true function to add the arrows based on the percentage being negative or positive. The text version is what we place in our line chart. Now, in order to change the colors of these detail labels to red or green, we simply need to reference the non-text versions of the measure within the color conditional formatting options of the detail labels, like we see right here. Now, this measure here is our current fiscal year goal measure. It's just the sum of the gross sales goal column from our calculated table within our variable. So we're using this measure within our error bars. And it's going to ensure the goal dynamically changes within our line chart when the user selects quarter or month. All right, so the last thing we're going to do here is review the UX/UI principles that were followed, so you're going to better understand the why behind the decisions that I made within this line chart visual. Here we can see that we're providing feedback to the user. So we're providing information to further help the users understand what they're looking at. We're providing interactivity with the field parameter slicer, which encourages exploration and engagement. By creating this header within the line chart background, we were able to make it clear that the slicer and the period label are part of this line chart group, and therefore they belong together. We took the time to set up our padding. We also aligned our elements, such as within our header. We also see balance at work here. For example, our period title and our slicer are split between the left and the right side. We carefully utilize contrast to make it clear what view the user is on. Selected as bold, white, and a different background color than the unselected button, which has a reduced transparency. The button navigation itself has a modern and familiar feel. Here we can see that we used contrast with color to provide emphasis. So we can see, for example, our gross sales current fiscal year is this thicker blue line. And we made it obvious that's more important than the gross sales previous fiscal year, which is this light gray dotted line. The label also indicates it's less important as it's a lighter color, smaller font, and italic. We've removed unnecessary details such as grid lines, because in this example, they just weren't needed in order for us to clearly show the type of insight we're trying to show. We've removed data labels and are only showing our percent to goal as we intended. We also are not showing any details for the gross sales previous fiscal year, as that's secondary context. We added context by showing variance. See here, we're comparing gross sales versus goal. Here we can see we're showing more context with the option to switch to quarter. We can see our y-axis provides values. We can see our previous fiscal year line provides secondary context. So all of this together is high density context being shown in a clean, digestible, simple way. We accented our variance measures with our red-green conditional formatting. This adds to the context with color, as it creates focal points, helps a user quickly understand the insight and its meanings. In our overall design, such as the rounded corners of our background paired with our field parameter slicer, and just overall clean design, helps make this line chart more engaging for our users. All right, so I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial on how to create next level UX/UI design line charts. Now, if you did find these tips helpful, don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification button. That way you'll be notified when I come out with additional videos related to Power BI UX/UI design. If you have any requests, please feel free to leave them in the comments. And then lastly, if you're looking for a course on advanced Power BI UX/UI design, feel free to check out the description where I have a link to my premium course, 14 Days to Mastering Power BI UX UI design.